What if we had the Nate Bronstein law, punitive damages in the tens of millions for any school that is found to be either in denial, silent, complicit in the case of, and we'll define as cyberbullying, number one. Number two, that if any parent or any student is aware of this, they have an obligation to report it. We'll come up with some kind of a tribunal, and omission will be actionable. So if you know about it and you don't say anything, that's also going to have damages.
Yeah. The platforms need to have liability too.
Okay,
because they're hosting everything that goes on. And in other words, it's like this doesn't just happen.
And they
aren't telephoning
and
each
you and I were
other.
speaking before, Rob. They're the drug dealers.
Yes, they're the drug dealers, literally and figuratively, but yes.
Welcome back to the Antony Gordon Show, powered by a Lighthouse Edutainment. So there are some conversations you can prepare for, and there are others you approach with humility because the subject is simply too painful and too important to treat like just another episode. Today is one of those conversations. The Bronsteins are angel parents, the parents of the late Nate Bronstein, a 15-year-old boy whose life was cut short after relentless cyberbullying, including classmates telling him that he should take his own life. Just saying those words out loud, it should stop us in our tracks. This isn't a statistic. This isn't a headline. This is a child, a family, a future that should have unfolded over decades, gone in a moment of unbearable pain. And yet, Rose and Rob have chosen courage over silence. Instead of being defined only by tragedy, they have stepped forward to educate, to advocate, and fight for other children whose warning signs might still be missed. Before we get into that conversation, I want to start off with our weekly brain stretch to make the point that but for our brain exercises, social media is out to ensure that your brain atrophies. Here's a scenario. You walk into a room, there is a candle, a fireplace, and an oil lamp, and you simply have one match. What do you light first? Think about it and drop your answer in the comments below, and we'll give you the response and what the life lesson is from today's brain stretch. So our viewers and listeners on the Antony Gordon Show know that one of the ideas and the thesis is to dispel erroneous isms, ideas that pop culture wants you to believe. M standing for myth is as follows. There's a myth that when a young person dies, God forbid, by suicide, people often reach for a simple explanation. They must have had a mental illness, they must have been suicidal for a long time. This belief creates emotional distance. It allows communities to feel that the tragedy was inevitable, rather than something we all must confront. But that explanation can also become a way of not looking closer. Because it suggests if a child seemed happy, if there was no obvious warning signs, then nothing could have been done. And that, my friends, is a dangerous place for a society to land. Let's dispel this myth. The reality is a little more complex and a lot more urgent. Not every young person who dies by suicide carried a formal mental health diagnosis. Sometimes the tipping point is acute emotional pain. Relentless bullying, public humiliation, social exclusion, the crushing belief of being unwanted or invisible. For an adolescent brain still developing, still learning how to regulate emotion, social pain can feel absolute. In those moments, suicide is often not a desire to die, but a desperate attempt to make unbearable pain stop. This doesn't erase the role mental health can play, but it widens the lens, because if pain created in relationships can push a child towards the edge, the compassion inside relationships can pull them back, which means peers matter, schools matter, adults noticing withdrawal matter, kindness matters more than we think. Silence is not neutral. Exclusion is not harmless. Words are not just words. For a hurting child, they can feel like verdicts. Let's take the S and supersede the myth we've just dispelled. The deeper truth is that suicide in young people is really about one single cause. It's about pain without relief and loneliness without interruption. And that means prevention is not only clinical, it is human prevention, which looks like this: noticing the quiet student who suddenly withdraws, taking bullying seriously the first time, not the 10th, creating school cultures where cruelty is unacceptable, teaching kids that pain is survivable and help is real, reminding every child again and again that you matter more than this moment. Because the opposite of suicide is hope, connection, and belonging. And those are things a community can build together. One of the most important lessons in Nate's story is something every parent, educator, and student needs to hear. When a young person suddenly becomes withdrawn, that's not something to ignore. That may be a signal of deep emotional distress, and sensitivity in those moments can quite literally save a life. Suicide is now one of the leading causes of death among young people, which means we are facing not isolated incidents. We are facing a generational struggle, struggling under the weight of anxiety, depression, comparison, and all too often cyberbullying and social exclusion. That is why this conversation matters. Awareness creates sensitivity, sensitivity creates intervention, and intervention can create hope. Today's episode is not easy, but it's essential. It's about grief, yes, but it's also about responsibility, compassion, and the power each of us has to notice someone who is hurting before it's too late. I'm really honored and humbled that we have in the studio today Rob and Rose Bronstein, who not only are the parents of the late Nate Bronstein, who you'll hear more about during the course of our discussion, but who've taken, in many ways, the ultimate tragedy and have used that as a springboard to highlight the issue, the magnitude of the issue, and in many ways, I think, have become sort of the vicarious mouthpiece of so many other parents that can empathize and sympathize with the ordeal that Rob and Rose have been through. Rob and Rose, welcome to the Antony Gordon Show.
Thank you.
I want to talk about Nate. If you could share with us a little bit about Nate, a little about the soul that left this world too early.
So, about maybe a month or so after he passed, Rose and I hosted about 25 or so of his friends for an informal memorial. And what was, so uniform in what people had to say is just how funny he was. I mean, Nate lit up any room, making people laugh.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. In school, out of school, probably pushing the boundaries sometimes in class, but just always funny, always sort of lightening up a room. He also loved sports, pretty much any sport, watching sports, playing sports. Basketball was far and away his favorite sport, which I'm sure we'll talk about some of the work that we do, which revolves around youth basketball. What people might think about any child who takes their life was certainly very different than our experience. He was a normal kid with a lot of friends and family and
I think the viewers and listeners know that we have the sort of acronym MDS, myth, dispel, and then we superseded. You nailed it in as much as there's an erroneous feeling out there that if a kid commits suicide, there's something systemically wrong with the kid. There's ideations. There's nothing further from the truth. I didn't have the merits to have met Nate, but I obviously preparing for today's discussion, I did a lot of reading. The theme that I saw throughout everything is he loved life. He loved making people happy. That's the antithesis of a person who's got some dark side.
That's absolutely true. And what I think really needs to change and we need to disrupt the status quo. And it's just like more convenient for society to accept the narrative that when you hear of a child choosing to take their own life because they are in harm's way or they're being harmed, the immediate reaction or response is, oh, well, that child must have had mental health issues.
So why do people do that? Explain that to me.
It's easy and comfortable, right? It's easier to blame the child, blame the parent, than to really stop and think, what did that child experience that pushed our son so far to realize, I don't even want to be here anymore. I'm scared. I'm being attacked. I'm being threatened with physical and deadly harm. This information it was circulated to hundreds and hundreds of kids within the school and throughout the city of Chicago.
So I want to underscore a point that you're making, because it's very, very important that the people got to understand that it's the kind of pain that no human being can fathom.
Especially when you are a teenager, when you're 15 years old, and you don't have the self-control, you're impulsive, and your frontal cortex isn't fully developed. And in our situation, our son was told to go kill himself.
Teenagers today have a relationship with social media and what happens online very, very different than certainly my wife and I. Maybe people who are 20 now, they're adults and they grew up with this. One might say, well, gee, it's just, someone texting you or someone putting something on Snapchat. And that's not the way that it's experienced by a 13 or 15 or 17-year-old for all the reasons you said, but also their world and sort of the way that they, experience everything socially and they'd be sitting next to each other physically, but texting with 100%. Each other or someone else. So there's the importance of just sort of the reality of what happens online is very different than the way that you or I might think of it.
And it gets disseminated so quickly. So he was being attacked, harassed, abused, and threatened online on Snapchat and on a text thread with probably around 20 his team, JV basketball team. So he's being threatened and harassed on a text chain. He's being threatened and harassed on a Snapchat message that kept being reposted and recirculated. One student admitted to posting it to about 200 people. So this is spreading like wildfire.
At this point, to what extent were you and Rob aware of this insane bullying? And to what extent do you think the school was aware? Because I think the school
when this happened,
should hold their head in shame.
This all happened in December of 2021, and on a weekend. It started on a Friday night, carried through to about late Saturday night. And then on Sunday night, we now know that Nate actually filed a cyberbullying report in an email to the Dean of Students at the Latin School of Chicago. He followed the school's protocols. Dean of Students, Bridget Hennessy, he sent her an email saying,
with a photograph of the Snapchat.
He said,
too.
I am being cyberbullied. So we didn't know that any of this had happened. So this happened on December 10th, 11th, 12th. And exactly a month later, on January 13th, we lost him. It was a Thursday night at 9:30 at night. We were all home. I was in my room on the computer. I was actually on Amazon I was about to buy toilet paper and paper towel. It was 9:30, and all of a sudden I hear Nate screaming my name.
No, me scream.
I'm sorry, Rob. I hear these screams.
Rob screaming your name.
And I've never heard him scream like that before. And it was just like it was a typical night. Like, we had been having struggles at home with all the stuff with school.
Right.
I had bought him a ticket earlier that afternoon to go on spring break with his friend. I bought him a plane ticket. We had actually had a therapy session that same night with a therapist, with me, Rob, Nate, and the therapist, because we were in therapy. Then he was in his room. We had been told by a parent that he had heard her sons talking to Nate on FaceTime, and they were laughing. And then at 9:30.
Last conversation with Nate. Do you recall that?
I do. I can tell you mine.
Yeah, I don't
What's yours, Rob?
So and this all revolved around the JV basketball team that he was on. And of course, we didn't know any of what happened until several weeks later. But the last thing I said to him is I reminded him that I needed his JV basketball jersey because it had to be returned to the school. So again, maybe that was a triggering thing. I don't know. But we had no idea. And I had never spoken directly to the headmaster of the school at all. But he invited me to call him. We had a conversation probably 9, 10 days later. And we were on a conversation and he also didn't tell me. And when we found out, which was maybe a week later, I confronted him and I asked him point blank, why didn't you tell me? And he gave me 2 answers that were equally ridiculous. I thought you knew.
Oh my God.
And I thought that it would hurt too much for you to hear these things.
Garbage. Those are both red herrings.
Of course.
This is happening in schools across America.
Yes.
So we want to make the point, okay, that the lack of sensitivity of this headmaster, any normal person reaches out condolences and has enough of a heart to say, forget about my legal exposure. These people have just been through the biggest tragedy. But no, he was probing your husband to see
how long they could cover it up for.
Correct.
And if we knew.
Yeah.
So this happened on January 13th. We thought in our little family unit by the early January, we knew Nate was leaving Latin and he was going back to his previous school. He was going back to Parker.
Okay.
So in our minds, we were like, okay, we took care of a bad semester experience at Latin. He's going back to the school where he was at. He's calm. We're happy. We're going to reset and move forward. That didn't happen. So January 13th, this happens. The next morning, my daughters we're so paralyzed. We don't even know like where to begin. But my daughter said to me, can you please call the school and tell them not to put out like a message because we're so paralyzed. We don't even know what to do and we don't want
100%.
rumors to spread. We want wildfire. Like we need a minute to process this and understand what happened.
completely normal reaction.
So I send an email first to the Latin school to Bridget Hennessy and she doesn't answer. Then I pick up the phone and I call the 2 guidance counselors and I got a hold of one of them. And I told her what happened. I said, we need our privacy right now because we can't even make sense of this. Like my girls are not in a position, we're not in a position to start to get incoming calls.
Any person is in a state of complete shock,
we were like,
overwhelmed.
We can't breathe. Like we need a minute. But they took that to their advantage also.
Oh my gosh.
And put that narrative out there. The family wants their privacy. We are not to talk about it. We are not to discuss.
And they spun it because it is you.
They removed us from the directory so that no one would have our phone. I swear to you.
How long did that take?
That weekend.
Yeah.
That weekend they pulled us from the directory. I've just had to take it. I mean, and they did such a good job within the parent community at Latin and the Chicago community to say things that I'm a liar, I'm lashing out. Where was the mother? Like any way to diminish my character, my integrity, to blame me for what Nate did. I'm a bad mother. I was too busy at the country club sipping champagne.
So instead of having your back, condolences and being sympathetic, they're throwing mud at you.
Right. And the very few people that did, it was very quiet and not public because nobody wanted to show support for us because they're afraid to lose their social currency in that little bubble of these private schools. That is more important to them than standing with the Bronsteins and demanding that, there needs to be accountability. Nobody did that out loud.
And what lesson
Exactly
did those 1,000 other young people get? Lawyer up?
Yep. Exactly 2 weeks later, on Thursday, January 27th, I get connected with a Latin parent. Her sons were friends with my son. And she has
never spoken to her before.
And never spoken to her before, did not know her. I only knew.
But Nate was buddies with her son.
He had twin boys.
Sons.
So through a couple of phone calls, a parent says to me, you need to get in touch with this parent. I call the parent. Within 15 minutes, she shows up at my house and I open the door. And she has printed out for me, just printed on paper, excerpts of the text thread of all the cyberbullying, all the...
And this is the first time you were privy to this?
First time I'd ever seen it. So, 8 by 11 papers, all the kids' names, all the insults, all the threats, a printout of the Snapchat with names on it. And when I started reading it, again, reading what was said to him, I was going into shock all over again.
I can imagine.
Like I was already in shock, but I felt like whatever was left of my soul at the 2-week mark, I was on the floor at her knees crying.
I can absolutely imagine.
And in my mind, after reading what all the threats and what they had said to him, like in my mind, I feel like my child was murdered. It is not any different what they did to him online, and the distress that it caused to his mind and his emotional state. It's the same thing if those 20 kids would have grabbed him, pulled him around the back of the school and physically beat him, and would have left him to die there from like the injuries of being beaten. They just did it through social media, and they injured his brain.
That's what our son screenshotted and sent to the dean of students. And we learned this obviously subsequent, she refused to consider that bullying or cyberbullying. She referred to it as a social media incident.
He called it cyberbullying in his email.
And gave the photo.
And she recharacterized it back to him in an email back and reframed it and minimized it as a social media incident.
That's absolutely repugnant.
Well, do you know why? Because
of course,
if it's bullying, they have to do certain things. They have to investigate. They have to
notify
inform
the parents.
That's
at the moment that Nate filed the report and she received it. There's a law in Illinois called the Bullying Prevention Act, and at that time, she was required by law to notify Rob and I that Nate had triggered a report of being bullied. They broke the law that was set in Illinois and designed to protect children in these circumstances. Our elected officials recognized how dangerous bullying and cyberbullying is, which is why they put this Prevention Act together and to try to put a system in place to get, to allow, when your child is in danger, and large legislators know that when they're saying, I'm in danger, I'm being harmed online, you need to tell the parents so the parents can intervene, get the proper resources, make sure they're safe.
And this is just a law in Illinois.
This is an Illinois bullying law.
You're a fool as a parent if you think the school is going to look out for your kid in a situation like this. I mean, I don't know how more bluntly to say it.
But there's a difference between that the school hasn't got your kids back versus turn it around, make the parents into the villain, and say the kid was a basket case.
Yeah,
yes, that's what they did.
Yeah. I guess there's subjectivity and everything, but if an adult who's responsible for the care of hundreds of students as the dean of students gets an email from a child saying I'm being cyberbullied, and they reclassify that as I'm using the exact words, a social media incident. I don't even know what that means. I do now, but I don't think most people would know what that means. I don't think that's what it is.
It's definitely not. It's a complete superficial PR spin. I think
it was a way for her to wiggle herself out of it and not have to call my husband and I to tell us that Nate was in danger.
So I think what people listening would want to ask you guys is, one, why do you think Nate did not say to you guys that he's getting mud thrown at him online? If I'm saying it in the most respectful way, I think it speaks volumes of Nate.
I can tell you exactly why. Because he knew that if he would have come to me or Rob and said, I'm being attacked online, I'm being cyberbullied, our initial reaction as parents would have been, give me your phone, let me see it, right? And we're gonna call the school, we're gonna call the parents of the kids of who are doing this.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's what that would. I mean,
and
I wouldn't
teenage kid would. Yeah, you're right.
However, in his mind, he knew that was going to happen, and he probably thought in his mind that would make things worse for him, right?
So in a weird way, protecting
He thought that us getting involved would probably amplify the problem for him, which I'm sure it would, because these kids are they're horrible kids, right? You don't want to be called a snitch. You don't want to, right? So he in his mind is like, if I tell my parents, they're going to call the school, they're going to take away my phone, they're going to call the parent, like they're going to get so involved, and it's going to be more humiliating for me. So in my mind, I know that he's like, I'm just going to have to handle this handle this myself. And just for the record, we asked for apologies from the students, from the bullies. We asked for.
I was going to ask you, did any of them,
Not a single one.
anyone say,
Not a single one. Every parent.
knock on your door?
No. Every parent of that bully blamed Nate. Changed the story. One parent called the cyberbullying, she referred to it as a misunderstanding.
A misunderstanding, right.
Yeah.
There's no misunderstanding yet.
So no apologies, no accountability. So these students who bullied my son to the point where he chose to take his life, they have been taught you can do anything you want in this world, to the point where you hurt a child so badly that they choose to take their life. You will not be held accountable. There doesn't go on your record. There's no punishment, no suspension, nothing. And
goes to Rob's point. What lesson? What's the teachable moment? They missed it.
They're going
worse.
They're going to move through life, and they're
yeah.
going to be rotten. They're rotten human beings, and the lesson that they've been taught is you can do whatever you want and get away with it.
Look,
so you know what? I can relate to this.
Hold on. There were two opportunities to teach a lesson. There was an opportunity in December, and there was an opportunity in January, and then there was an opportunity in the subsequent 4 years. Actually, 3 opportunities. They've not taken advantage of any of those.
The culprit's getting very lumpy with what they're brushing under it.
Yeah.
What would you tell parents out there right now? Because one of the comments you made, which was I really resonated, is what you're doing is unbelievably courageous, and that in many ways you made some comment to me that you don't want any other parents to go through this, which is an unbelievable thing, Rose.
I genuinely don't. I don't want any other parent. But the problem is, it's still continuing to happen. Even after Nate in 2022, even till now, even just a couple months ago, kids are being cyberbullied in the same way that Nate was cyberbullied. And it's the same story. It's rinse and repeat over and over again. Child is cyberbullied or bullied. Parents call the school. Parents report to the school. The school does nothing. The child takes their own life, and the school blames the parents. They blame the student. But most of the time, the bullies don't get any type of consequence. So as much as we're out there publicly talking about it and not wanting this to happen, it continues to happen.
Okay, so this is one of the main reasons why we launched the show, is the world knows how dangerous this hypodermic needle with screens are.
Yes.
Okay. What can we do to shift the paradigm so to stop this snowball of tragedy where somebody's kid, God forbid, out there is going to be another statistic?
I mean, you have to take it from so many angles. One, I would start to tell parents, do not trust your schools to protect your child.
Okay, it's a very good point.
That is in public school and private schools. And I actually think private schools are even more egregious because they're independent schools. They're not regulated by the government. So they have this arrogance about them that they think they can do whatever they want when they want.
Well, they're selling a product in a way that a public school isn't.
Systemically, the way the private schools are set up,
they have customers.
Right.
Yeah, they're nonprofit, but they're running a business, right? They want to fill every seat. And I want parents to really, really, really understand that, and I'm not saying this is in every school, but in the grand scheme of things, the schools are not, safety is not their number one priority, because when something goes awry, they will self-preservation, and they will do whatever they can to not have to be held liable for it. And this has been in so many cases. I mean, there's so many families and I have been in touch with these families throughout the years, and they've gone through the same thing that we've gone through. Mallory Grossman out of New Jersey, she was 12 years old. The same thing happened to her. The parents sued the school, this public school, and about 5 years later, they actually settled. They received a $9.1 million settlement because the school did not want to go to trial. Jocelyn Walters, 14, also in New Jersey, same exact story, rinse and repeat. She was horribly bullied at school. The parents called the school. School did nothing. She took her own life. They're in a lawsuit. Private schools, you've got the Snell family in Maryland. What's the name of that school? I don't remember. You've got the Reed family out of Lawrenceville, also a suicide from bullying. It goes on and on and on and on. We need And we need some type of reform. Like, I firmly believe there needs to be some type of federal legislation put
there's
in place.
also on the federal level.
Federal, which is going to be impossible to do. I mean, I know it's not even ever going to happen. It was attempted once back in 2008. I believe it was a rep out of California on behalf of Megan Meyer, another child who was lost to suicide after bullying. She tried to pass a federal law to hold accountability around bullying, but it didn't make it.
So you think if the idea of, which is now, there's a bipartisan bill before Congress of having a Surgeon General warning on certain apps and platforms saying, buyer beware. We know that this platform can cause addiction.
Mental health, right.
So we're trying to push that. What if there was a law that if it was found on discovery that a school was aware that a child was in harm's way and was complicit or silent, there can be enormous punitive
There
damage
should be.
to the point where it's not possible for the school to continue to be
That's
open.
a very good idea.
There should be.
Well, look, I mean, yes, exactly that. I mean, that is, it's funny. A few minutes ago, you said that the easy thing would be to become a recluse. I mean, I there wasn't a second. I don't even want to take the credit you're giving for making the choice, because I swear I don't
think it's an
recall.
There's
Yeah, I
no
don't
other
recall
option.
having that option.
There's no other option, because if we were to go away, then they literally get away with murder.
You made a comment about like a safety Surgeon General type warning, and I'm sure you know that there are other places in the world that are now ahead of us as far as
Australia.
social media. Australia, I think Spain is talking about
Yep.
it too. But the day will come, and it'll be unfortunate because there'll be 1 or 2 generations of kids who were,
And a
you
lot
know, a
of
casualty
victims
of
along the
this.
ways, yeah.
But there will come a day when the way that you look at a picture of people happily smoking in the 1950s, or people driving without a seatbelt and drunk driving, that's how we'll like, people will say, I can't even imagine that in 2010 or 2020 that parents gave 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds a screen and access to all this, like Neanderthals we must have been to have, like the way you might look at an image from 50 years ago.
Handing a person a needle,
a child working
and
in
handing
a coal
person
mine.
some acid, and say, have a nice day.
Yeah.
What if we had the Nate Bronstein law on record, which says the following: in punitive damages in the tens of millions for any school that is found to be either in denial, silent, complicit in the case of, and we'll define as cyberbullying, number one. Number two, that if any parent or any student is aware of this, they have an obligation to report it. We'll come up with some kind of a tribunal, and omission will be actionable. So if you know about it and you don't say anything, that's also going to have damages.
The platforms need to have liability too.
Okay,
because they're hosting everything that goes on. And in other words, it's like, this doesn't just happen.
And
these aren't telephoning
and
each
you know, I
other.
was speaking before, Rob, they're the drug dealers.
Yes, they're the drug dealers, literally and figuratively, but yes, drug dealers. And that's where drugs are now sold, is on Snapchat, because
I'm sure there's no news to you. The leadership of Meta were well aware that certain features were compounding and exacerbating anxiety and depression.
Absolutely. It's all
The
been
likes,
uncovered.
etc., because kids are completely tuned into external affirmations. Knowing that, the reason why they didn't redact that was financial. Purely, we're a public company. So
They make money off of every child that's on social media, like, because they track all of their habits on social media, and that's how they make money. So they know the child's location.
So
they
what's
know
Mark Zuckerberg going to say when he meets his maker one day?
he's just gonna lie, and
well, the maker one. So I'm going to tell you a story that is just,
he's lying. He lies all the time right now. He's gonna lie. He's going on the stand in a couple of weeks. He's gonna lie. Most Sari was just.
So the only way you can live with yourself by lying is either have acute cognitive dissonance, or you're just going to be completely schizoid, completely separate your emotions.
I'll tell you.
Pathetic.
I'll tell you a story that we were in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, I think in January of 24. This is actually where Mark Zuckerberg famously got up and
he turned around to you guys, right?
Josh Hawley forced him to turn around and to apologize
Rose
to
is the
all
one
of us parents.
Rose pushed the Senate Judiciary Committee and their staff to have it in a bigger room and open up to parents. So
Did you, Rose?
Yeah, it's true. So
Good
if
for
anyone
you.
deserves credit for Zuckerberg having to stand up and apologize
Good for you,
in
Rose.
front of how many hundreds of parents. But listen, so afterward, and it became questioning about all aspects of social media, but ostensibly the point of that hearing was sexual predation and child sex trafficking and things like that. And so afterward, there was a press conference outside of the hearing room, and it was Senator Durbin and Senator Graham, and there was 3 or 4 now young adults who'd been victimized. Okay, and
For sexual exploitation.
yeah, and as disturbing as everything that was said in the 3 or 4 hours prior were, what I heard in that hallway, which I'm going to tell you was in my opinion even worse. So there's a young man who's maybe 19 or 20 now, and he said, and he was standing right next to 2 U.S. senators, the chair and the ranking member, whatever they call it, of the committee, in front of how many dozens of cameras, and he said that there are thousands and thousands of child pornography images of him online, right?
Very familiar.
Because of when he was 15 and so forth, he was exploited. But he said that he and his lawyers, and here he has a direct line to 2 U.S. senators, that he and his lawyers have tried in vain to not only remove these images, but even to shut down the accounts. And I can't remember if they were on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever platform.
They've tried in vain.
He said yesterday, the day before the day I'm speaking, one of the accounts we've been trying is still live. So that's how little the social media companies care. He has 2 senators putting him up in a press conference, talking to dozens of reporters, and the social media companies care so little, they won't shut down the account of child sex predators.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's going to lead to where we're going with this. Because I don't want to leave this podcast.
So you asked a question about Zuckerberg and his maker. I mean, it's mind-blowing what we saw. I'm telling you, I'll never forget. If this guy, who's now an adult, by the way, and he has attorneys, and so if he can't get these accounts shut down, I mean, imagine a kid in the middle of being sextorted who's 14 in his bedroom. Imagine what that kid is thinking if this young adult can't even make happen what he's trying to make happen.
But also, I'm at the point where shame on our legislators. They've had so many years. It's just all talk.
Okay, so here's what I'm.
It's all theater. It's just and nothing gets done.
Well, I'll tell you the following. So, there now exists, and one of the things that parents can do, there now exists social media monitoring software, which I'm assuming with AI is probably more effective than ever. And what social media monitoring software will do will alert a parent if, for example, the child is being solicited by drugs or pornography is sent or really threatening messages.
The parent gets an alert.
Yes,
correct.
It's called Sammy's Law.
Yeah.
And
I'm familiar with Sammy's Law.
It's sitting in Congress right now. It was introduced a couple of years ago. Both Rob and myself have been advocating for this bill, along with Sam Chapman and Dr. Laura Berman. The bill was designed to honor Sammy's memory. He was sold a pill on Snapchat in 2020, and the drug dealer delivered a pill laced in fentanyl to his house like a pizza.
A laced fentanyl.
And software would have caught it. But so here's the question. Why does there need to be a law to have software? And the answer is, and I don't want to misspeak about the current status of Snap, but at least a year or 2 ago when we were involved, because Snap and most of the platforms do not allow safety monitoring software for the reason that they think that's, who wants to go to a party when your parents on the other room watching? Like they don't want that kind of environment.
And does it compromise them financially?
Well, they want engagement. They want young people
at any cost.
And again, it's been a while, so I might be a little off. But at the time, for example, Google, who's YouTube, did allow what they call open API, so that the software can sync with it. But Snapchat did not. Okay. Can't you even allow parents to have their own to spend their own money, buy software to monitor what happens? It's like,
and it's only,
and the reason why they're precluding that is it's not so cool to hang out at parties with your parents behind the curtains.
One of their lame excuses is they're afraid that if the kids know they're being monitored, they're going to jump to another platform that
it's more dangerous.
He's going to lose. Kids are going to
I'll lose a client.
go off of Snapchat and go somewhere else. all that law asks, and it's very narrow. It's like and it only covers social media related harms. So it's not like a surveillance tool. It doesn't allow a parent to be able to see every text between kids. It triggers cyberbullying. It triggers drug dealing. It triggers sextortion. It triggers sexual exploitation, predatory activity. That's when a parent would get an alert saying your child has just received very dangerous messaging, or he's been please go check on him or her.
Which
That's all
platform
it
that
is.
has any kind of sense of moral responsibility?
That's all it is. It's all it is. But
What about, sorry,
So,
by the way, if it was a law, it would be an equalizer because now they would all have it. So it would actually answer that question.
So that's where I want to go with this. What can be our call to action to perpetuate Nate's legacy, to make real changes?
I mean, my wish list of reform and regulation would be, one, to sunset Section 230, because that is a liability shield for
Explain what
Zuckerberg
230 is to our
and
audience.
Spiegel and all the CEOs. So Section 230, which is the Communications
when the internet was
Communications
invented,
Decency Act, the CDA.
it goes back 30
years, right? And it was put in place, for the telephones. Nobody knew how much it would shield social media platforms today. So because of Section 230 and the actual part, the C part, there's 26 words in Section C of 230 that gives all of these CEOs they're completely shielded by any liability of what goes on their platforms.
We're just a neutral catalyst. We're just a distributor. And that's what they hide behind. We don't pick and choose.
Yeah.
No, so it doesn't allow. I mean, they're suing. There are lawsuits coming. If that was removed, then that opens up the ability to sue.
Okay.
Section 230.
Okay, Section, brilliant.
Sammy's law.
Okay.
Sammy's law would have immediate impact.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Because what would happen if parents have the option to be able to install software, technology from my phone? For example, Sammy's law would have saved my son's life. Sammy's law would have saved Sammy Chapman's life.
In live time,
because if
you would have been privy
to... I would have had software, and I would have done this for sure if I knew that I had the option.
Absolutely
so on
brilliant.
my phone, there'd be an app. On his phone, the same app would be
in live
on
time,
there.
right?
Yes, and on his iPad and on his computer, and he would know about it. You can't do it behind their backs. You have to have the conversation with your child. I'm putting in software to keep you safe. So if you are receiving dangerous content, if you are being approached by a drug dealer, if you're receiving messages to harm yourself, I will get alerted. And just know that we can talk about it, and I will protect you. Okay,
so we're
that's
redacting 230. What are we doing with Sammy's law?
It needs to pass.
Meaning what?
It's in the, I don't know the terminology, but it's
It's in Congress right now. We're waiting for it to go to markup. Then, if it's enacted into law, then the law will dictate to Spiegel and Zuckerberg and Citron that they now have to open what's called an API. It's really like that middle, with the hair dryer and the voltage, and you need like that middle charger.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to just open that up so that someone like me can then download third-party software. There's like 4 or 5 or 6 of them that you can choose from. I buy a membership or subscription. I download it to my phone. I download it to my child's phone, and that's it. If I am a parent and I'm deciding to give my 16-year-old a phone and access to social media, I need a seatbelt, right? So I'm going to say to my child, I'm giving you this, and I want you to use it responsibly. But
so it's not some clandestine thing that they don't know about.
It can't be. So same thing. We teach our children from as young as they are, like, a toddler, you get in the car, you put in your seatbelt, and you tell them over and over again, you need to stay safe in the car. You need to stay safe online, and I need to be there to make sure that I keep you safe. It's like
Rose, you're amazing.
Any other situation.
And what the platforms have argued and the lobbyists have argued is that a minor has a right to privacy online. That in other words, the relationship between Google and Meta and a 14-year-old should take precedent, or should undermine the parent's obligation and right to protect their own.
Do you know how many lobbyists Philip Morris had in the days of? Okay,
many.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a hard question. By all means, if you don't want to answer, You don't have to. What would you say to Nate right now if you're sitting here?
If he was sitting here, I mean, I would, I would even never thought about that. I mean, I would give him a hug and tell him that I love him. And I would do anything to have him back. I want him back. He deserves to be here. I would say, I wish you would have told me what you were going through. We would have helped you. We would have protected you and made sure that you were okay. And we would have held. We would have made sure that what those students did to you, I would spend my entire life making sure they were held accountable.
To the CEOs of some of the big tech companies, I want to say this is what you've caused. This is beautiful people doing good things, and there's got to be a point in time, the 3 seconds before you fall asleep at night, where your conscience realizes that at the end of the day, in the name of money and extra G5, you are causing unbelievable, profound damage. And at some point in time, your conscience hopefully will catch up with you. I want to say to Rob and to Rose Bronstein, you should be blessed to continue doing the work that you're doing, because I have no doubt that the work that you're doing is going to ensure that there are other potential Nates out there who are shielded because of the work that you're doing. And anything that we can do to continue, I think you are holding the torch of the biggest global pandemic. And I cannot tell you how I'm overwhelmed by your sincerity and your courage and continued success. Anything that we can do, we will obviously back you up on. I'm hoping and praying that you prevail in the lawsuit, and that sets a precedent and they're exposed, and Nate should rest in peace.
Thank you.
Before we leave you, here's the answer to the brain stretch. Again, the brain stretch, you're in a dark room with a candle, a fireplace, and a gas lamp, and you've got one match. What do you light first? What's the answer? The match. The point that people jump into the big objects and they miss the obvious is one of the illusory optical illusions of social media, is to weave in facts that could be harmful because people are looking at the big picture. The trees also count. This episode is not just a story. It's a reminder, a responsibility, and most importantly, a chance to protect a life. If you're listening and you're hurting quietly, privately, in a way that feels invisible to everyone else, please hear this clearly. Your pain is real, but it's only temporary, and you don't have to carry it alone. There are people who want to listen, people who care, people whose entire purpose is to help you get through this moment and reach the next level. Speaking up is not weakness. It is a courage in its purest form. And for the parents, educators, and students listening today, notice the quiet changes. Take bullying seriously. Choose kindness when it would be easier to stay silent, because a single moment of compassion can interrupt a lifetime of pain. Nate Bronstein's story is heartbreaking, but the purpose of telling it is not only to mourn what we've lost, it's to protect what can still be saved. This is Antony Gordon. Until next week, stay real, stay rare, stay awake.